Picture this. You're at a house party in Laredo, Texas. The music is loud, drinks are flowing, and everyone's having a good time. But then you overhear a conversation that makes your blood run cold. A man is on the phone, bragging loudly enough for everyone to hear. "I just stole $50,000 from the Mexican cartel, and I'm not scared of them because I'm in America." Within hours, that man would be fighting for his life at the Mexican border. His bloodied face caught on security cameras as he desperately tried to escape from a moving vehicle. His name was Erik Tadeo Ramirez, and his story serves as one of the most chilling reminders that in the world of organized crime, borders are just lines on a map. This isn't fiction. This isn't a Hollywood thriller. This is the true story of a man whose moment of arrogant triumph became his death sentence, and it all happened in March 2023, in a case that continues to baffle the FBI to this day. To understand Erik Tadeo Ramirez's story, you need to understand Laredo, Texas. This city of 260,000 people sits directly on the Rio Grande, connected to its Mexican sister city Nuevo Laredo by several international bridges. It's one of the busiest border crossings in North America, with thousands of people and millions of dollars in legitimate trade crossing daily. But where there's legitimate commerce, there's also its dark shadow. Laredo has long been a strategic corridor for drug trafficking, human smuggling, and money laundering. The cartels don't see the border as a barrier. They see it as a business opportunity. And in this environment, Erik Tadeo Ramirez lived his life, seemingly unaware that he was about to make the most catastrophic decision of his existence. Erik was a local resident of Laredo, a man who moved in circles where cartel money wasn't just a rumor, it was a reality. Whether through work, friends, or simple geographic proximity, he had somehow gained access to or knowledge of a significant cartel cash operation. $50,000 isn't pocket change to anyone, but to a cartel, it represents something far more valuable than money: respect, fear, and the absolute certainty that theft will be met with brutal consequences. The cartel in question was Cartel del Noreste, also known as CDN. This organization isn't some ragtag group of criminals. They're a sophisticated, militarized operation that split from the notorious Zetas cartel. They control significant territory in northeastern Mexico, including Nuevo Laredo, just across the river from where Erik lived. CDN is known for extreme violence, high-level corruption, and an absolute zero-tolerance policy for anyone who crosses them. For Erik to steal from CDN wasn't just theft. It was a declaration of war against one of Mexico's most ruthless criminal organizations. March 24, 2023, started like any other Friday night in Laredo. Erik Tadeo Ramirez was invited to a house party, the kind of gathering that happens in border cities every weekend. Friends, acquaintances, music, drinks, and the relaxed atmosphere of people unwinding after a long week. But Erik arrived at this party carrying a secret that was literally worth $50,000. Somehow, through means that may never be fully understood, he had managed to steal this substantial sum from Cartel del Noreste. The exact circumstances of the theft remain shrouded in mystery. Did he work for someone connected to the cartel? Was he involved in a legitimate business that the cartel used for money laundering? Did he stumble upon an opportunity and seize it impulsively? What we do know is that by the time he arrived at the party, Erik had the money and was feeling invincible. As the night progressed, Erik made a phone call that would seal his fate. Speaking to an unknown woman, he began to boast about his recent success. According to FBI court documents and witness statements, Erik didn't just mention the theft, he bragged about it loudly enough for multiple party guests to overhear. "I just stole $50,000 from the Mexican cartel," he reportedly said, his voice carrying the confidence of a man who believed he had outsmarted one of the most dangerous criminal organizations in the world. "I'm not scared of them because I'm in the United States." Those words, "I'm not scared of them because I'm in the United States," reveal a fundamental misunderstanding of how cartels operate. Erik seemed to believe that the international border would protect him, that somehow being on American soil made him untouchable. It was a fatal miscalculation that demonstrates how little he understood about the reach and ruthlessness of modern organized crime. The party guests who overheard this conversation later told FBI investigators that they were shocked by Erik's openness. In a border city like Laredo, where cartel influence is a daily reality, bragging about stealing from them isn't just dangerous, it's suicidal. Some guests reportedly felt uncomfortable and considered leaving. Others couldn't believe what they were hearing. But Erik seemed oblivious to the danger. He continued his phone conversation, apparently believing that his geographic location provided some kind of magical protection against cartel retribution. He had no idea that his words were being heard by people who might have connections, or that in the world of organized crime, information travels faster than social media rumors. What Erik failed to understand was that cartels like CDN have extensive networks on both sides of the border. They have informants, associates, and business partners throughout Texas border communities. The idea that he could steal their money and then publicly brag about it without consequences showed a level of naivety that bordered on delusional. As the party continued into the late evening, Erik seemed relaxed and confident. He had no way of knowing that his boastful phone call had already set in motion a chain of events that would lead to his disappearance before the sun rose. Before we continue with Erik's story, it's crucial to pause and examine the life lessons already emerging from this true crime case. These aren't abstract moral teachings, they're practical survival wisdom that could save your life. Lesson 1. Words have consequences in the digital age. Erik's downfall began with his mouth. In our connected world, information spreads instantaneously. What you say at a party, post on social media, or discuss in what you think is privacy can reach unintended audiences within minutes. This is especially critical when dealing with sensitive or dangerous situations. The principle applies beyond criminal activity. Career-ending comments, relationship-destroying gossip, and reputation-damaging statements can spread faster than ever before. Erik's case shows us that even in a seemingly private setting, a house party among friends, your words can have devastating consequences. Lesson 2. Never underestimate your opponents. Erik's belief that the US border would protect him from cartel retribution reveals a dangerous underestimation of his adversaries. Modern criminal organizations operate internationally with sophisticated networks, resources, and intelligence capabilities that rival government agencies. This lesson extends to all aspects of life. Whether in business, personal relationships, or conflict resolution, underestimating the capabilities, reach, or determination of those you're dealing with can lead to catastrophic miscalculations. Lesson 3. Geographic boundaries don't equal safety. The idea that being in America made Erik untouchable shows a fundamental misunderstanding of how modern threats operate. Cybercriminals attack across borders, terrorists plan internationally, and organized crime groups have global reach. Personal safety in the 21st century requires understanding that threats don't respect political boundaries. Whether it's online security, financial fraud, or physical danger, thinking that your location provides automatic protection can be a fatal mistake. Lesson 4. The illusion of invincibility. Erik's behavior suggests he felt invincible after successfully stealing from the cartel. This psychological state, where initial success breeds overconfidence, is incredibly dangerous. It leads to taking unnecessary risks, making poor decisions, and failing to properly assess ongoing threats. This applies to everything from investment decisions to personal relationships. Success can breed dangerous overconfidence that blinds us to real risks and consequences. While Erik was celebrating his perceived victory at the house party, Cartel del Noreste was already mobilizing. To understand what happened next, you need to understand how modern criminal organizations operate when they've been robbed. First, they gather intelligence. CDN likely had informants and associates throughout Laredo who would have heard about Erik's boastful phone call within hours, if not minutes. In border communities, information about cartel-related activities spreads through complex networks of fear, loyalty, and mutual dependence. Second, they verify the theft. $50,000 doesn't just disappear without someone noticing. The cartel would have quickly confirmed that money was indeed missing and identified Erik as the most likely suspect. Given that he was publicly bragging about the theft, this verification probably took very little time. Third, they plan the response. CDN's reaction to Erik's theft wasn't spontaneous. It was swift, organized, and professionally executed. The speed of their response suggests they had operational capabilities already in place in the Laredo area, which makes sense given the city's strategic importance for border criminal activities. The cartel's decision to kidnap Erik, rather than simply kill him, reveals something important about their intentions. Dead, Erik couldn't provide information about how he executed the theft, who might have helped him, or where the money was hidden. Alive, he could be interrogated, forced to return the money, and used as an example to others who might consider similar acts. But there was another factor at play: respect. In cartel culture, allowing someone to steal from you and get away with it is seen as a sign of weakness that can encourage others to try similar acts. Erik's public bragging made this even worse. He wasn't just a thief, he was someone openly disrespecting their power and authority. At approximately 12:45 a.m. on March 25, 2023, less than 2 hours after Erik's boastful phone call, a blue Dodge Ram pickup truck arrived at the address where the house party was taking place. The timing wasn't coincidental, it was the result of rapid intelligence gathering and quick operational planning. According to FBI court documents, multiple masked men carrying firearms exited the vehicle. They weren't dressed like typical criminals. They moved with military precision and coordination that suggested professional training. This wasn't a random act of violence. It was a professional kidnapping operation carried out by people who knew exactly what they were doing. The men forced their way into the property and quickly located Erik. Witnesses later told investigators that the kidnappers seemed to know exactly who they were looking for, further confirming that they had received detailed intelligence about Erik's presence and likely his physical description. Erik was forcibly dragged to the blue pickup truck. According to witness statements, he appeared to understand the gravity of his situation and began resisting, but he was outnumbered and outgunned. The kidnappers efficiently overcame his resistance and forced him into the vehicle. What happened next reveals both the professionalism of the kidnappers and the desperation of their victim. Instead of immediately driving away, the vehicle began moving toward the international border. This wasn't a random kidnapping for ransom. It was a cross-border extraction operation designed to take Erik to Mexico, where CDN could operate without interference from US law enforcement. The choice to take Erik to Mexico rather than dealing with him in Texas was strategically brilliant. In Mexico, specifically in CDN-controlled territory, the cartel could interrogate him without worrying about FBI surveillance, police intervention, or other complications that might arise on US soil. What happened as the blue Dodge Ram approached the Juarez-Lincoln International Bridge represents one of the most dramatic and tragic moments in this entire case. Security cameras at the bridge captured footage that provides crucial evidence about Erik's final moments in the United States. As the vehicle approached the border checkpoint, Erik made a desperate decision that would be his last act of freedom. Realizing that once the truck crossed into Mexico, his chances of survival would drop to nearly zero, he chose to risk everything on one final escape attempt. The security footage shows a man with blood on his face, clearly Erik, opening the front passenger door of the moving blue Dodge Ram. The image is haunting, a human being so desperate to avoid his fate that he's willing to jump from a moving vehicle on an international bridge, with no guarantee that he'll survive the fall or that anyone will help him if he does. Erik's bloodied appearance in the footage raises disturbing questions about what had already happened to him during the short ride from the house party to the border. Had he been beaten during the initial kidnapping? Was this the result of attempts to resist during the drive? Or had the kidnappers already begun their interrogation while en route to Mexico? According to the FBI criminal complaint, Erik was attempting to exit the vehicle when he was pulled back into the blue Dodge Ram four-door pickup truck by force. The security cameras captured the moment when multiple hands reached out to drag him back inside the vehicle. You can only imagine the terror he must have felt, knowing that his last chance at freedom was slipping away. Bridge attendants and security personnel witnessed this dramatic scene, but were powerless to intervene. By the time they could have responded, the vehicle was already accelerating toward the Mexican side of the border. The kidnappers had timed their operation perfectly to minimize the window for any potential rescue. As the blue Dodge Ram sped past the bridge checkpoint into Mexico, it left behind physical evidence of the struggle. A blood-stained shirt and a pair of pants were found on the roadway. These items, likely Erik's, served as silent testimony to his desperate final struggle for freedom. Erik's sister and girlfriend, realizing he was missing and having heard about the dramatic events at the house party, contacted the Laredo Police Department to report his disappearance. Given the international nature of the case and the involvement of a Mexican cartel, the FBI quickly joined the investigation. The federal involvement wasn't just procedural, it was essential. Local police departments, no matter how competent, lack the resources and jurisdiction to investigate cross-border kidnappings involving international criminal organizations. The FBI brought specialized expertise in cartel investigations, international cooperation protocols, and the technical resources needed to analyze the extensive evidence. The security camera footage from the bridge became crucial evidence, providing visual confirmation of the kidnapping and Erik's condition during his final moments in the United States. But the FBI investigation revealed much more than just the dramatic border crossing. Investigators quickly identified the blue Dodge Ram pickup truck and traced its registration to the mother of Jonathan Cabriales, a man with suspected ties to Cartel del Noreste. This wasn't a random vehicle, it was connected to someone within the cartel's operational network. On March 27, 2023, just 3 days after Erik's kidnapping, Cabriales was arrested when he attempted to re-enter the United States at the same border crossing where Erik had been taken to Mexico. The timing and location of his arrest weren't coincidental. FBI agents were already monitoring border crossings for anyone connected to the kidnapping. During questioning, Cabriales admitted that he knew Erik had stolen money from the cartel, confirming the FBI's understanding of the motive behind the kidnapping. However, he denied direct involvement in the abduction itself, claiming he was only the driver and wasn't aware of the violent nature of the operation. Cabriales' arrest and subsequent charges provided some measure of justice, but it also highlighted the limitations of U.S. law enforcement in cases involving Mexican cartels. While they could arrest and prosecute the individuals who operated on U.S. soil, the main perpetrators and their victim were now in Mexico, beyond the immediate reach of American justice. To understand what likely happened to Erik Tadeo Ramirez after he was taken to Mexico, you need to understand cartel psychology and the economics of fear that drive these organizations. Cartel del Noreste, like all major criminal organizations, operates on a foundation of absolute authority and fear. Their ability to conduct business, control territory, and maintain organizational discipline depends entirely on their reputation for swift, brutal retaliation against anyone who crosses them. When Erik stole $50,000 from CDN, he didn't just commit theft, he challenged their authority. When he publicly bragged about it, he disrespected their power. In cartel culture, both of these acts demand a response that serves as a message to anyone else who might consider similar actions. The kidnapping itself was part of this message. By taking Erik in broad daylight, using professional tactics, and successfully extracting him to Mexico despite his desperate escape attempt, CDN demonstrated their operational capabilities and reach. They showed the community that geographic boundaries wouldn't protect cartel enemies, and that their intelligence networks could identify threats quickly. But the kidnapping was likely just the beginning of the message. What probably happened to Erik after he was taken to Mexico serves as a warning that CDN once understood throughout their area of operations: steal from us, and you disappear completely. Erik Tadeo Ramirez's case provides a fascinating study in criminal psychology and the cognitive biases that can lead to catastrophic decision-making. Understanding these psychological factors isn't just academic, it's crucial for anyone who wants to avoid similar fatal mistakes. The illusion of control. Erik's decision to steal from CDN suggests he believed he had more control over the situation than he actually possessed. This cognitive bias, the illusion of control, leads people to overestimate their ability to influence outcomes that are largely determined by factors beyond their influence. In Erik's case, he may have believed that his knowledge of local conditions, his understanding of border security, or his connections in the community gave him some special advantage against cartel retaliation. This illusion of control blinded him to the reality that he was dealing with an organization with vastly superior resources, experience, and ruthlessness. Geographic bias. Erik's statement that he wasn't afraid because he was in the United States reveals a dangerous form of geographic bias, the belief that physical location provides automatic protection against certain types of threats. This bias is increasingly dangerous in our interconnected world. Modern criminal organizations operate internationally with the same ease that legitimate businesses do. They have networks, resources, and operational capabilities that transcend national boundaries. Erik's belief that the border would protect him shows a fundamental misunderstanding of how these organizations function. Overconfidence from initial success. The fact that Erik successfully stole the money initially may have led to dangerous overconfidence. In psychology, this is known as the success trap, when early success leads to overestimation of one's abilities and underestimation of ongoing risks. Erik's successful theft may have convinced him that he was smarter, luckier, or more capable than he actually was. This overconfidence likely contributed to his decision to brag publicly about the theft, which directly led to his identification and kidnapping. The bystander effect in reverse. Erik's decision to brag about his theft at a public party suggests he may have believed that being around other people provided some form of protection. This represents a dangerous misunderstanding of how information spreads in criminal networks. Rather than providing protection, the party setting actually increased his risk by ensuring that news of his theft would spread quickly through the local community. In areas with significant cartel presence, information about cartel-related activities spreads rapidly through networks of fear, self-preservation, and mutual dependence. Erik Tadeo Ramirez's disappearance didn't happen in a vacuum. It occurred within the complex ecosystem of cartel operations that exist throughout Texas border communities. Understanding this context is crucial for grasping why his case unfolded as it did, and why similar incidents continue to occur. The economics of border crime. The US-Mexico border represents one of the world's most lucrative criminal marketplaces. Billions of dollars in drugs, weapons, and human trafficking flow across this boundary annually. Cities like Laredo serve as crucial hubs in these operations, with cartels maintaining sophisticated networks on both sides of the border. $50,000. The amount Erik stole represents significant money to an individual, but to organizations moving millions of dollars monthly, it's more about principle than financial impact. The cartel's swift, violent response to Erik's theft wasn't primarily about recovering the money. It was about maintaining their reputation and deterring future thefts. Intelligence networks. One of the most underestimated aspects of modern cartel operations is their intelligence capabilities. Organizations like CDN maintain extensive networks of informants, associates, and sympathizers throughout border communities. These networks can identify threats, track enemies, and coordinate operations with efficiency that rivals government agencies. Erik's case demonstrates how quickly these intelligence networks can operate. From his boastful phone call at the party to his kidnapping was less than 2 hours, an almost impossibly short time frame unless the cartel had pre-existing intelligence capabilities in the area. Corruption and cooperation. Cartel operations in border cities rely heavily on corruption of local officials and cooperation from community members who are either sympathetic to or intimidated by these organizations. This creates an environment where cartel activities can occur with minimal interference from law enforcement. The speed and efficiency of Erik's kidnapping suggests the perpetrators were confident they could operate without immediate law enforcement intervention. This confidence likely stems from their understanding of local conditions and their assessment of the risks involved in operating on US soil. More than a year after Erik Tadeo Ramirez's disappearance, the FBI investigation remains active, but significant questions remain unanswered. Understanding what investigators know and what they don't provides insight into the challenges of investigating cross-border cartel crimes. What the FBI confirmed. Federal investigators have definitively established several key facts about Erik's case. Erik did steal approximately $50,000 from Cartel del Noreste. He was kidnapped by armed men connected to the cartel. He was forcibly taken across the border to Mexico. The kidnapping was professionally planned and executed. At least one person involved in the operation, Jonathan Cavrialis, has been arrested and charged. These confirmed facts provide a clear narrative of the basic events, but they leave many crucial questions unanswered. What remains unknown? The most significant unknowns in Erik's case reveal the limitations of US law enforcement in investigating cross-border cartel crimes. How exactly did Erik steal the money from CDN? Was he working alone, or did he have accomplices? Where is the stolen money now? What happened to Erik after he was taken to Mexico? Is he still alive, or was he killed? Who were the other individuals involved in the kidnapping? These unknowns exist largely because the crime continued in Mexico, where US investigators have limited jurisdiction, and cooperation with Mexican authorities can be complicated by corruption concerns and jurisdictional issues. The challenges of cross-border investigation. Erik's case highlights the complex challenges faced by law enforcement when investigating crimes that span international boundaries. While the FBI has extensive resources and expertise, they can't simply cross into Mexico to continue their investigation. Cooperation with Mexican authorities is essential, but it's also complicated by several factors. Different legal systems and procedural requirements. Concerns about corruption within Mexican law enforcement. Jurisdictional disputes about which agencies have authority. Political sensitivities around sovereignty and border security. These challenges mean that cases like Erik's often remain partially resolved, with some perpetrators facing justice while others remain beyond the reach of US law enforcement. Behind the dramatic headlines and federal investigations, Erik Tadeo Ramirez's disappearance represents a personal tragedy for his family and a community trauma for Laredo residents who live daily with the reality of cartel influence. Family devastation. Erik's sister, who reported him missing to the Laredo Police Department, represents the human face of cartel violence. Her brother's decision to steal from CDN didn't just endanger him, it devastated everyone who cared about him. The psychological impact on family members of kidnapping victims is particularly severe because of the uncertainty involved. Unlike cases where a body is found and grieving can begin, disappearances leave families in a state of perpetual limbo. They don't know if their loved one is alive or dead, suffering or at peace. Erik's case is especially tragic because his family likely understands that his chances of survival are minimal. In cartel kidnappings involving theft and public disrespect, victims are rarely returned alive. The family must live with the knowledge that Erik's own decisions led to his fate, adding guilt and anger to their grief. Community fear. Erik's disappearance sent shockwaves through Laredo's community, serving as a stark reminder of the cartel's reach and ruthlessness. For residents of border cities, cases like Erik's reinforce the understanding that cartel organizations operate with impunity and that crossing them can have fatal consequences. This creates a climate of fear that affects how people conduct their daily lives. Community members become more cautious about what they say, where they go, and who they associate with. The knowledge that someone can disappear for stealing from a cartel makes everyone more aware of the invisible boundaries and unwritten rules that govern life in border communities. The ripple effect. Erik's case also affects others who might have been tempted to steal from or otherwise cross cartel organizations. His disappearance serves as a powerful deterrent, exactly the message CDN intended to send. But this deterrent effect comes at a terrible human cost. Communities shouldn't have to live in fear of criminal organizations, and individuals shouldn't face death for making poor decisions. Erik's case highlights the broader social costs of cartel influence in American border communities. The legal outcomes of Erik Tadeo Ramirez's case illustrate both the possibilities and limitations of the American justice system when dealing with international cartel crimes. Jonathan Cavriales, the driver's fate. Jonathan Cavriales, identified as the driver of the blue Dodge Ram used in Erik's kidnapping, was arrested when he attempted to re-enter the United States on March 20. He was charged with kidnapping, a federal crime that carries severe penalties. Cavriales' arrest represents a partial victory for law enforcement. By holding him accountable for his role in the kidnapping, the FBI demonstrated that participating in cartel operations on U.S. soil will result in federal prosecution. His case sends a message to others who might consider participating in similar operations. However, Cavriales was denied bond release, indicating that federal prosecutors considered him either a flight risk or a danger to the community. This decision reflects the serious nature of his alleged crimes and the understanding that individuals connected to cartel operations may not respect traditional bail conditions. Cavriales' eventual sentence will depend on his cooperation with federal investigators and his exact role in the kidnapping. If he provides information about other participants or CDN operations, he might receive a reduced sentence. If he remains uncooperative, he could face decades in federal prison. The limitations of justice. While Cavriales' arrest provides some measure of justice, it also highlights the limitations of the American legal system in cases involving international criminal organizations. The other participants in Erik's kidnapping remain in Mexico, beyond the immediate reach of U.S. law enforcement. This creates a situation where some perpetrators face justice while others remain free. The individuals who actually planned the kidnapping, gave the orders, and carried out the violence against Erik may never face consequences for their actions. These limitations exist not because of flaws in the American justice system, but because of the inherent challenges of investigating and prosecuting international crimes. Criminal organizations like CDN deliberately structure their operations to minimize their exposure to prosecution, often keeping their leadership and key personnel in jurisdictions where they're protected from foreign law enforcement. Federal versus local prosecution. Erik's case was handled by federal rather than local prosecutors, reflecting the interstate and international nature of the crimes involved. Federal prosecution provides several advantages: greater resources for complex investigation, expertise in dealing with organized crime, authority to coordinate with international law enforcement, ability to pursue charges across state and national boundary. However, federal prosecution also means longer timelines, more complex legal procedures, and often less direct communication with victim families. The efficiency gains from federal involvement come at the cost of the more personal approach often found in local prosecutions. Erik Tadeo Ramirez's case provides a window into the daily reality of life in American border communities, where cartel influence is a constant presence. Understanding this reality is crucial for grasping why his story unfolded as it did and why similar cases continue to occur. The invisible boundary. In cities like Laredo, there are visible boundaries, the international bridges, the border checkpoints, the Rio Grande, and invisible boundaries that can be just as important for personal safety. These invisible boundaries include areas controlled by different criminal organizations, neighborhoods where certain activities are tolerated or forbidden, and social circles where cartel connections are understood but never openly discussed. Erik's case suggests he may not have fully understood these invisible boundaries. His decision to steal from CDN and then brag about it publicly indicates a dangerous lack of awareness about the unwritten rules that govern behavior in border communities. The economics of fear. Cartel influence in border communities operates largely through economic incentives and the threat of violence. Many residents find themselves caught between the need to earn a living and the danger of becoming involved with criminal organizations. Some people work directly for cartels, earning money but accepting significant personal risk. Others work in legitimate businesses that cartels use for money laundering or other illegal activities. Still others try to avoid any cartel involvement, but find it difficult to completely separate themselves from organizations that have significant economic influence in their communities. Erik's case suggests he may have been involved in some aspect of cartel economic activity. Otherwise, how would he have gained access to $50,000 in cartel money? His decision to steal that money may have been motivated by financial desperation, greed, or a simple opportunity that seemed too good to pass up. The culture of silence. One of the most important survival mechanisms in border communities is knowing when to speak and when to remain silent. Talking too much about cartel activities, asking too many questions, or sharing information with the wrong people can have fatal consequences. Erik's decision to brag publicly about stealing from CDN violated this culture of silence in the most dangerous way possible. By openly discussing his theft at a house party, he guaranteed that information about his actions would spread throughout the community and that it would eventually reach people connected to the cartel. The party guests who overheard Erik's boastful phone call faced their own difficult decisions. Should they warn him about the danger he was in? Should they distance themselves from him to avoid becoming targets themselves? Should they report what they heard to law enforcement? Most chose the safest option. They said nothing and tried to stay uninvolved. While this might seem cowardly to outsiders, it reflects the harsh reality of survival in communities where cartel influence is a daily concern. To fully comprehend Erik Tadeo Ramirez's fate, it's essential to understand the criminal organization that ordered his kidnapping. Cartel del Noreste, CDN, isn't a typical criminal gang. It's a sophisticated, militarized organization with capabilities that rival government agencies. Origins and evolution. CDN emerged from a split within the notorious Los Zetas cartel, inheriting many of that organization's tactical innovations and violent methods. Los Zetas had revolutionized cartel operations by recruiting former military personnel and adopting military tactics, communication systems, and organizational structures. When CDN formed, it retained these military characteristics while focusing its operations on northeastern Mexico, particularly the states of Tamaulipas and Nuevo León. This geographic focus put them in direct control of crucial border crossings with Texas, including the area around Nuevo Laredo, directly across from where Erik lived. Operational capability. CDN's response to Erik's theft demonstrates several key organizational capabilities. Intelligence networks. The speed with which they identified Erik and located him suggests extensive intelligence capabilities on both sides of the border. Operational planning. The kidnapping was executed with military precision, suggesting professional training and careful planning. Cross-border operations. Their ability to successfully extract Erik to Mexico demonstrates sophisticated understanding of border security and operational procedures. Communication systems. Coordinating a kidnapping operation across international boundaries requires secure, reliable communication systems. These capabilities explain why Erik's belief that being in the United States would protect him was so misguided. CDN operates as an international organization with the resources and expertise to conduct operations wherever their interests are threatened. The business model. Understanding CDN's business model helps explain why they responded so dramatically to Erik's $50,000 theft. Like all successful criminal organizations, CDN operates multiple revenue streams. Drug trafficking, primarily cocaine, heroin, and fentanyl. Human smuggling, weapons trafficking. kidnapping for ransom, extortion and protection rackets, money laundering. The $50,000 Erik stole probably represented revenue from one or more of these activities. But more importantly, allowing the theft to go unpunished would have signaled weakness to competitors, employees, and potential victims of their other criminal activities. In the cartel business model, reputation for ruthlessness is a crucial asset. It reduces the need for actual violence by deterring potential threats through fear. Erik's case serves as an investment in this reputation. The cost of kidnapping and likely killing him is justified by the deterrent effect it has on others who might consider crossing CDN. Erik Tadeo Ramirez's kidnapping wasn't a spontaneous act of violence. It was a professionally executed operation that utilized modern technology and sophisticated planning. Understanding these technological aspects reveals how criminal organizations like CDN have adapted to 21st century conditions. Intelligence gathering. The speed with which CDN identified and located Erik suggests they used multiple technological tools for intelligence gathering. Communication monitoring. They may have monitored phone calls, text messages, or social media communications to track Erik's location and activities. Human intelligence networks, digital communication systems allowed them to quickly coordinate with informants and associates throughout Laredo. Location tracking. Modern smartphones and vehicles contain multiple systems that can be used to track location, either through legitimate services or through malicious software. The fact that the kidnappers arrived at the exact location of the house party within hours of Erik's boastful phone call suggests they had real-time intelligence about his whereabouts. Operational coordination. Executing a cross-border kidnapping requires sophisticated coordination between multiple individuals and groups. CDN likely used encrypted communication systems to coordinate between intelligence personnel who identified and tracked Erik, operational teams who carried out the kidnapping, transportation specialists who managed the border crossing, command personnel who directed the overall operation. This level of coordination requires technological infrastructure that rivals what legitimate businesses use for complex projects. Border crossing technology. Successfully taking Erik across the international border required detailed knowledge of border security systems and procedures. CDN's success in this aspect of the operation suggests they had real-time information about border checkpoint procedures, knowledge of security camera locations and capability, understanding of US and Mexican customs and immigration protocols, contingency plans for dealing with unexpected complication. The fact that they successfully crossed the border, despite Erik's dramatic escape attempt, shows they were prepared for resistance and had planned multiple scenarios. More than a year after Erik Tadeo Ramirez's disappearance, the FBI investigation remains active, employing significant resources while facing substantial limitations. Understanding both the capabilities and constraints of federal law enforcement provides insight into why cases like Erik's often remain partially unresolved. FBI investigative resources. The Federal Bureau of Investigation brings substantial resources to cases involving international organized crime. Specialized task forces. The FBI maintains joint task forces specifically focused on cartel activities, combining federal agents with local law enforcement and international partners. Technical capabilities. Federal investigators have access to advanced surveillance technology, digital forensics, and communication analysis tools that can trace criminal activities across borders. International cooperation. The FBI works with Mexican law enforcement agencies through formal cooperation agreements and informal professional relationships. Financial investigation. Federal agents can trace money flows, identify bank accounts, and follow financial transactions across multiple jurisdictions. In Erik's case, these resources allowed investigators to quickly identify the vehicle used in the kidnapping, arrest Jonathan Cavriales, and establish the basic facts of the case. The security camera footage from the bridge provided crucial evidence that confirmed Erik's kidnapping and attempted escape. The limitations of federal investigators. Despite these substantial resources, the FBI faces significant limitations when investigating cross-border cartel crimes. Jurisdictional boundaries. Once Erik was taken to Mexico, U.S. investigators lost direct access to the crime scene, witnesses, and evidence. Corruption concerns. Cooperation with Mexican law enforcement is complicated by concerns about corruption within some Mexican agencies. Political sensitivities. International investigations involve complex diplomatic considerations that can limit law enforcement actions. Resource allocation. Even the FBI has limited resources and must prioritize cases based on various factors, including likelihood of successful prosecution. These limitations explain why Erik's case remains partially unresolved, and why many similar cases never reach complete closure. The challenge of proof. One of the most significant challenges in Erik's case is establishing what happened to him after he was taken to Mexico. U.S. prosecutors need evidence that would meet American legal standards, but that evidence is largely located in Mexican territory, controlled by the criminal organization responsible for his disappearance. This creates a situation where everyone involved, law enforcement, Erik's family, and the community, understands what likely happened to Erik, but proving it in court remains extremely difficult. Erik Tadeo Ramirez's case provides important insights for law enforcement agencies and policymakers dealing with cross-border organized crime. These lessons extend beyond his individual tragedy to broader questions about border security, international cooperation, and community safety. The need for enhanced intelligence sharing. Erik's case demonstrates the crucial importance of real-time intelligence sharing between U.S. and Mexican law enforcement agencies. The speed of CDN's response suggests they had better intelligence about Erik's activities than law enforcement did. Improving intelligence sharing requires secure communication systems. Law enforcement agencies need encrypted, real-time communication capabilities that allow rapid sharing of threat information. Trusted personnel networks. Effective cooperation requires building personal relationships between investigators who can work together despite institutional limitations. Joint operations centers. Physical or virtual centers where U.S. and Mexican investigators can coordinate ongoing operations and share real-time intelligence. Community engagement and protection. Border communities like Laredo need enhanced law enforcement presence and community engagement programs that can provide protection for residents who might become cartel targets. This includes witness protection programs, enhanced programs for individuals who provide information about cartel activities, community education, programs that help residents understand the risks associated with cartel involvement and the resources available for protection, economic development, legitimate economic opportunities that reduce the appeal of cartel-related income, technology and border security. Erik's case highlights the need for enhanced technological capabilities at border crossings. While security cameras captured his attempted escape, they weren't sufficient to prevent his kidnapping or provide actionable intelligence for rescue. Enhanced border security technology might include advanced surveillance systems, real-time monitoring capabilities that can identify and track suspicious vehicles and individuals, rapid response teams, specialized units that can respond immediately to border security incidents, communication systems, enhanced communication between border security personnel and law enforcement agencies. Erik Tadeo Ramirez's disappearance is part of a larger pattern of cartel influence on American border communities. Understanding this broader impact is crucial for grasping why individual cases like Erik's occur and why they're likely to continue without significant policy changes. Economic impact. Cartel activities have profound economic effects on border communities. Legitimate business disruption. Businesses may face extortion, forced participation in money laundering, or loss of customers due to security concerns. Property values. Areas with significant cartel activity often experience depressed property values and reduced investment. Tourism impact. Security concerns can devastate tourism industries that many border communities depend on. Erik's case contributes to these economic impacts by reinforcing perceptions that border communities are dangerous and lawless. Social and cultural impact. The presence of cartel organizations changes how communities function. Social trust. Residents become more suspicious of neighbors and reluctant to engage in community activities. Cultural expression. Community celebrations, gatherings, and cultural events may be modified or cancelled due to security concerns. Youth development. Young people growing up in these environments may see criminal organizations as normal or even attractive career options. Erik's disappearance reinforces these social impacts by demonstrating the real consequences of crossing cartel organizations. Political and governance impact. Cartel influence can undermine democratic governance and rule of law. Corruption pressure. Public officials may face pressure to cooperate with criminal organizations or ignore their activities. Law enforcement challenges. Police and other officials may be intimidated, corrupted, or overwhelmed by criminal organizations. Democratic participation. Citizens may become reluctant to participate in political processes or report crimes due to fear of retaliation. Cases like Erik's contribute to these governance challenges by demonstrating the power of criminal organizations to operate with apparent impunity. Erik Tadeo Ramirez's case raises important questions about how democratic societies should respond to international organized crime. Examining how other countries have dealt with similar challenges provides valuable perspective on potential solutions. The Colombian model. Colombia's decades-long struggle with drug cartels offers both successes and cautionary tales. Success factors: strong international cooperation, significant U.S. assistance, comprehensive social programs, and sustained political commitment over multiple administrations. Ongoing challenges. Despite major successes against organizations like the Medellin and Cali cartels, new criminal groups continue to emerge and operate. Lessons for the U.S. Success requires long-term commitment, international cooperation, and addressing underlying social and economic factors that make cartel recruitment possible. The Italian anti-mafia approach. Italy's experience with the mafia provides insights into legal and social strategies for confronting organized crime. Legal innovations, special prosecution units, asset forfeiture laws, and witness protection programs specifically designed for organized crime cases. Social mobilization, civil society movements that challenge the culture of silence and fear that organized crime depends on. Economic strategies, programs that provide legitimate economic alternatives in areas traditionally controlled by criminal organizations. The Central American experience. Countries like El Salvador and Honduras have faced cartel violence that threatens the foundations of democratic governance. Security challenges. When criminal organizations become powerful enough to challenge state authority, traditional law enforcement approaches may be insufficient. International cooperation, regional cooperation agreements, and international assistance programs can provide resources that individual countries lack. Root causes. Addressing poverty, corruption, and weak institutions is essential for long-term success against organized crime. As we near the end of Erik Tadeo Ramirez's story, it's important to consider what his case teaches about crime, justice, and survival in the 21st century. His disappearance isn't just a personal tragedy, it's a window into broader challenges facing American society. The evolution of organized crime. Erik's case demonstrates how modern criminal organizations have evolved beyond traditional models. International operations. Today's criminal organizations operate across borders with the same ease as multinational corporations. Technology integration. Criminal groups use advanced technology for intelligence gathering, operational coordination, and communication security. Professional capabilities. Organizations like CDN employ military tactics, business strategies, and technological resources that rival government agencies. Economic integration. Criminal organizations don't operate separately from legitimate business. They're integrated into economic systems through money laundering, corruption, and forced cooperation. The limitations of traditional justice. Erik's case also highlights the limitations of traditional justice systems when dealing with modern organized crime. Jurisdictional problems. Crimes that cross international boundaries create complex jurisdictional challenges that can prevent effective prosecution. Evidence challenges. When crimes occur in areas controlled by criminal organizations, gathering evidence that meets legal standards becomes extremely difficult. Deterrence failures. Traditional deterrence models may not work against individuals who don't understand the risks they're facing, or organizations that operate with apparent impunity. The human cost of criminal justice failures. Most importantly, Erik's case reminds us that abstract discussions about organized crime, border security, and international cooperation have real human consequences. Family devastation. Behind every case like Erik's is a family dealing with grief, uncertainty, and trauma. Community fear. Entire communities live with reduced freedom and increased fear due to criminal organization influence. Democratic erosion. When criminal organizations operate with apparent impunity, it undermines public confidence in democratic institutions and rule of law. As of late 2024, Erik Tadeo Ramirez remains missing. More than a year and a half after his dramatic kidnapping at the Mexican border, no credible information about his whereabouts or condition has emerged. For his family, this means living with the terrible uncertainty of not knowing whether he's alive or dead, suffering or at peace. For law enforcement, Erik's case remains an active investigation, but one with limited prospects for complete resolution. Jonathan Cavriales, the driver of the kidnapping vehicle, has been prosecuted for his role in the crime. But the other participants, the cartel leadership who ordered the kidnapping, and most importantly Erik himself, remain beyond the reach of American justice. What likely happened? While we may never know the exact details of Erik's fate, his case follows a pattern common in cartel kidnappings involving theft and public disrespect. Based on the standard practices of organizations like CDN, Erik was likely interrogated about the details of his theft, forced to reveal the location of the stolen money, and then killed as an example to others who might consider crossing the cartel. The interrogation would have been brutal and professional, designed to extract maximum information while serving as an example of what happens to cartel enemies. CDN would have wanted to know how exactly Erik gained access to their money, whether he had accomplices who might pose ongoing threats, where the stolen money was hidden, who else might know about their operation. Once they had this information, Erik's value to them would have ended. Keeping him alive would have served no purpose and created ongoing security risks. His death would have been swift but memorable, designed to reinforce the message that stealing from CDN brings fatal consequences. The message sent. Erik's disappearance achieved its intended purpose. It sent a clear message throughout the border community about the consequences of crossing Cartel del Noreste. The dramatic nature of his kidnapping, the security camera footage of his desperate escape attempt, and his subsequent disappearance all serve as powerful deterrents to anyone who might consider similar actions. This deterrent effect represents the true purpose of cartel violence. While outsiders might see Erik's kidnapping as an extreme response to a relatively minor theft, CDN understood that allowing the theft to go unpunished would encourage others to target their operations. The swift professional nature of their response demonstrates their understanding of criminal psychology and organizational management. The ongoing investigation. The FBI continues to investigate Erik's disappearance, but their options are limited by the international nature of the crime and the power of the organization responsible. While they can continue to pursue leads on the American side of the border, the likelihood of recovering Erik or gaining access to the primary crime scenes in Mexico remains minimal. This doesn't mean the investigation is useless. Information gathered about CDN operations, their networks in the United States, and their operational methods can be used to prevent future crimes and prosecute other cartel activities. Erik's case contributes to a broader understanding of how these organizations operate, even if it doesn't lead to his recovery. The broader implication. Erik Tadeo Ramirez's case represents more than an individual tragedy. It's a symptom of broader challenges facing American border communities and law enforcement agencies. His disappearance highlights the reality that international criminal organizations operate within American communities with sophisticated capabilities and apparent impunity. These organizations don't respect international boundaries. They don't limit their activities to traditional criminal enterprises, and they don't hesitate to use extreme violence against anyone who crosses them. Erik's case demonstrates that American citizens can become victims of international organized crime without ever leaving the United States. Final life lessons from Erik's tragedy. As we conclude Erik's story, it's crucial to extract the life lessons that his tragedy offers. Understand your environment. Erik's fatal mistake was failing to understand the environment he lived in. Border communities operate under different rules than other American cities, and ignorance of these rules can be fatal. Whether in criminal environments or other high-stakes situations, understanding the context you're operating in is essential for survival. Respect. Dangerous opponent. Erik's belief that being in America would protect him from cartel retaliation shows a dangerous underestimation of his opponents. Modern criminal organizations have international reach and sophisticated capabilities. When dealing with powerful adversaries, geographic boundaries provide less protection than ever before. Think before you speak. Erik's boastful phone call directly led to his identification and kidnapping. In our connected world, information spreads faster and farther than ever before. What you say in private can become public, and what you think is local can become global. Consider the potential consequences of your words before you speak. Consider long-term consequences. Erik's decision to steal from CDN may have seemed like a short-term opportunity for financial gain, but he failed to consider the long-term consequences. Criminal organizations don't forgive and forget. They remember and retaliate. Consider the full life cycle of consequences before making high-risk decisions. Seek help when needed. If Erik had sought help from law enforcement after stealing the money, he might have survived. While coming forward would have led to criminal charges, it would have been better than the fate he ultimately faced. When you're in over your head, seeking help from appropriate authorities can be the difference between legal consequences and fatal ones. Erik Tadeo Ramirez's story isn't just entertainment, it's a warning about the reality of modern organized crime and the importance of understanding the world we live in. His tragic disappearance offers crucial lessons for anyone who wants to avoid similar fates. If you found this case as compelling and disturbing as I did, there are several ways you can engage with these important issues. Stay informed. Subscribe to Criminal Mind Cortex for more deep dives into true crime cases that reveal important truths about our world. Understanding how crimes like Erik's happen is the first step in preventing them. Share awareness. Share this story with friends and family members who might benefit from understanding the reality of cartel influence in American communities. Knowledge can be the difference between safety and becoming a victim. Support victims. Consider supporting organizations that help families of kidnapping victims and communities affected by organized crime. Erik's family continues to live with uncertainty and trauma from his disappearance. Engage responsibly. If you live in a border community or travel to areas with cartel presence, take time to understand the local environment and the unwritten rules that govern behavior in these areas. Erik Tadeo Ramirez made a fatal mistake that cost him everything. His story serves as a powerful reminder that in our interconnected world, the consequences of our decisions can be immediate, international, and irreversible.